The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Money Max account presentation. My name is Dr. Joan Haakonstad, and I'm going to be your presenter tonight. Just a quick little bit about myself. I am a field partner with United Financial Freedom. I've been on the system using it for myself and my family since 2007, and it has completely changed my life and my family's life. And I tell you, I can't wait to talk about it. Now, we're going to be talking about a four-letter word tonight. That four-letter word is debt. And I have to tell you, before 2007, I was not too thrilled to talk about that concept, that word, that four-letter word. Now, I love it. And I think after we go through today, you're going to love that four-letter word too, because the good news is there's a solution. But before we get into that, let's talk about a little bit about the history of what debt can do to us. There was a Social Security Administration survey and study where they followed people after 40 years of work, or they followed people over the course of 40 years. And what they found was at the end of 40 years, out of 100 people, 54 people will be broke. Again, they've worked for 40 years, and 54 of them after those 40 years will be broke. They're going to be dependent on Social Security, relatives, friends, charity, just to make ends meet. 36, unfortunately, will be deceased after that 40 years. Of those 100 people, 5 will need to continue to work. They cannot make ends meet. They cannot do anything without working. And 4 will be financially secure. Out of those 100 people, after 40 years of work, 1 will be wealthy. So what does that tell us? Well, the sobering reality is for every 100 people after 40 years of work, only 5% will financially succeed. 95% of people will end up dead or dead broke. And the reality is there's a reason for that. There's really little to no education about finances in school. I remember being in school, my undergrad, before even high school, I remember being taught how to write a check, but nobody bothered to tell me how to make sure I had money in the account to cover that check. In fact, I remember coming home and saying, Mom, guess what? I know how to write a check. Hand me a check. I'm going to go get something. Hand me a check. My mom's like, Joni, no, that's not quite how this works. No, you may not just have a check. You may not just go out and write checks for things because you have to have money to cover it. I was just flabbergasted. I was beside myself. What do you mean I have to have money to cover it? All they said is I had to write this check and sign my name. I had to write it this way, so on and so forth. The reality is there's very little, if any, financial education in school. So there's no surprise that most people will financially be challenged after 40 years of work. And it's also no surprise that debt is at an all-time high. This is both true for our national debt as well as individual consumer debt. Our national debt is over $28 trillion. Consumer debt combined is over $14 trillion. So consumer debt consists of mortgages, credit cards, student loans, and auto loans. The reality is, especially when we've had no education about finances, we've created an American way of life where we buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't even know. And my friend Nick would say, and most people we don't even like. The result? Debt. Well, if you're watching this webinar and you're like most people, you probably want to get out of debt. You're not alone. The vast majority of Americans are drowning in debt, and yet they don't do anything about it because they don't know where to start. Now you're doing something about it. So congratulations. Debt, that 4-letter word, well, guess what? It's a big business. And the less we know about how to manage debt, the more profit big institutions make off of us. Although debt helps us pay for things we want when we don't have the money for it, debt costs us our future if we don't understand the difference between good debt and bad debt, or we don't know how to pay off that debt. So if it seems like no matter what you do, you can't make any real progress on your debt, well, I hate to say it, it's because the system was set up that way on purpose. I joke around and say that we're walking, talking dollar signs to the big financial institutions. And I'm not trying to mock them, although it may sound like I don't care for them. I actually do. Banks, financial institutions, they serve a big role in our society. And I'm grateful for them. I'm just not grateful for all the money that we hand over to them unnecessarily. And with the education, with the knowledge, with being here, you're going to find that there is a solution. You do not have to give away your money unknowingly and, more importantly, unnecessarily. So I remember when I graduated with my undergrad, I had about $10,000 worth of credit card debt. Now, I know it doesn't sound like a lot right now, but for me back then with a bachelor's, oh my goodness gracious, I felt absolutely overwhelmed with that debt. $10,000, I felt like I couldn't breathe. It was just so much. I felt like I couldn't do anything. I waited to buy a house. I waited to do all these things because I felt like I was drowning in debt. Traditionally, I was told when I went to the bank, they said, well, why don't you just consolidate that debt and get a lower monthly payment? I go, okay, well, how will that work? They said, well, you do just that. You consolidate your debt, you get a lower monthly payment, then you just have one payment instead of multiple. Or you can refinance your debts, your credit card's debts, to a lower interest rate. I thought, okay, well, those two sound okay, but it didn't quite sit well in my head because all I was doing was continuing that vicious cycle of debt. It didn't feel like I was actually doing anything to pay off that debt. They also said, well, you could try a biweekly payment plan. So when I started looking into that, in case you don't know, a biweekly payment plan means that you have one payment that you would typically make per month. You split it in half, and instead of paying it monthly, you pay it every 2 weeks. You pay half of it every 2 weeks. Well, at the course of the end of the year, you end up paying one extra payment. I thought, well, geez, well, that will certainly work because there's no magic to paying down debt. You have to send extra money, right? Well, at least a biweekly payment plan, out of all three of these traditional banking approaches, that's the only one that was designed to actually help us get out of debt sooner. Now, there's a common misnomer, though. A lot of people believe that when you do a biweekly payment plan, that 30-year mortgage will be cut in half if you're doing it with a mortgage. And the unfortunate reality is that's mathematically an impossibility. On average, if you do a biweekly payment plan on a 30-year mortgage, you will cut it down from 30 years to, on average, 24 years. It's only going to shave off about 6 years on average, anywhere from 4 to 8 years. So 6 years on average. It is mathematically impossible to get it paid down quicker with a biweekly payment plan. Again, you're shaving off 6 years. That's 6 years of payments. Fantastic. Better than doing nothing. Now, when I was trying to pay down my credit cards, I also did other research and I found some financial gurus. And one of them said, hey, you know what? You need to reduce your standard of living. Stop going out. Stop enjoying life. Start eating ramen noodles. Don't do anything else. And that extra money that you're saving from not living your life, well, send it over to your debts. In fact, target the debt with the lowest balance. Once you get it paid off, roll it over to the next one. That's called a snowball effect. So I actually tried that, and let me tell you, it actually worked. But after working so hard and living so frugally, I really felt like there had to be something else. I just was stuck. I was beside myself that I worked so hard, and now I don't even get to enjoy the fruit of the labor of going to school. Now, the other financial guru says, no, 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 no. Don't target the debt with the lowest balance. Target the debt with the highest interest rate. Well, that confused me. Why do we have two leading financial gurus giving completely different advice on how to pay down debt? It was illogical. They were conflicting to each other. And the reality is that they provide a one-size-fits-all approach to finances. And honestly, I'm grateful that they do. Because if they didn't, there would be a lot of people out there that wouldn't have a clue what to do. They're giving some guidance and they have helped a number of people get out of debt. But the reality is, mathematically, it's not necessarily the fastest way to pay down your debt. There is a solution, and that is the Money Max account system. It involves no refinancing. There's no change to our standard of living. It's not a biweekly payment. It's not a debt roll down, and it's definitely not a concept nor a theory. So if that's what it isn't, what is it? Well, it's a web-based financial GPS. Let me ask you, have you ever used a GPS to get where you want to go in your car when you're driving? Most people have. I know I sure have. So what do? You input an address where you want to go, and the system looks at where you're starting from, and it maps out all the potential ways to get where you want to go, and it finds that one fastest solution. It then guides you step by step, turn by turn, on how to get to that in-state goal, where you want to go driving. If you miss your turn, you hit road construction, what does your GPS do? It recalculates. So imagine that type of technology, but for your finances. That's what our system provides. It looks at your money coming in, it looks at your money going out, and it mathematically finds the one fastest solution for you to pay off your debts given your unique situation. As your finances change, it changes with you. It will instantaneously adjust. It's a roadmap to pay down your debts fast, and it provides an individual, unique plan for you and your situation. It's for your current debt and it's for your future debt. So far, we've helped accelerate the paydown of over $2 billion in principal. And let me tell you, it's not just magic, or it's not magic, it is just math, albeit extremely complex math, but math nonetheless. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the banking concepts and strategies behind that. But first, we're going to start with an amortization schedule. And we're going to start pretty simple. And I have to say, a lot of people have actually never looked at an amortization schedule. So when you have a closed-ended loan, like a mortgage or an auto loan, you make a payment, one payment every single month for the term of your loan at a specific interest rate. So we're going to look at a mortgage. Let's say you have a mortgage at a $300,000 balance, 4% interest. That makes your monthly payment $1,432.25 over the course of 30 years. So let's look at an annualized amortization schedule. So lots of numbers, but let me walk you through it. At the end of year one, you have paid $11,900 in interest. Your total payments for the year have been $17,000. So of that $17,000, $11,000 of it went to interest. That means that 69.26% of your payments went to interest. Now, wasn't the interest rate 4%? Well, that's your stated interest rate. You're actually paying 69%. So after year 5, don't worry, you're ahead of the schedule a little bit. You still paid $17,187 in payments. You only have $10,900 going to interest now. So that means of your payments, 63.94% went to interest. Year 10, 55% of your payment goes to interest. Year 15, people think you're halfway through the mortgage, and technically, by time, you are right. And at year 15, you still have 46% of your payment servicing interest. Remember how I said we're walking, talking dollar signs to the financial institutions? I hope you can see that that is 100% true. The good news, though, is we've created a better way. So let's look a little bit closer at this interest rate. Remember, the payment each month is $1,432.25. I have not forgotten that 25 cents, but just to make it easy, I'm going to round a little bit. So month number 1, we've made that payment of $1,432.25. Of that payment, $432 went to principal, $1,000 went to interest. By the way, that's 70% of our payment that went to interest. But don't you worry, month number 2, we now have $2 more going to principal. Woot woot, we're on a roll. Only $998 went to interest. Yeah, let's do this. Year number 1, you have now made total payments of $17,187. $17,187. Of that, I hate to tell you, only $5,200 of it went to principal. Year 5, guess what? Year 5, you have $85,000 that you've paid toward your mortgage. Of that, only $28,000 went to principal. 57 grand went to interest. And guess what most people do in year 5 to year 7? They refinance and they start this whole thing all over again. Now, if you remember, when I was talking to the bankers, what did they say? Refinance and consolidate everything into one loan. They also said, "Ooh, refinance, get a lower interest rate." That would start this whole cycle all over again. Do you think there was a vested interest for them to have me refinance? Absolutely. Of course, they made more money on me. I'm a walking, talking dollar sign to them. So, what year do you think is the mid part of our mortgage? We already said 15 years is the mid time of our mortgage, between 30 years, half of that's 15. Well, I hate to tell you, but year 19 and 3 months, you are now only halfway through your mortgage. You've paid over 330 grand in there. You have a pretty good interest rate, 4%. You still paid 330 grand to the banking company, and only 150 of it went to interest. Again, your mortgage started at 300,000. You now only owe 150,000. You are only halfway through your mortgage, yet you've paid 330 grand. Your total amount that you've paid over the course of that 30 years, $515,610. How much was your interest? 300 grand. You just paid 72% interest. Yet I'm told, well, hold on, I've got a great interest rate. It's 4%. I don't need this program. I kind of beg to differ a little bit. Geez, I don't want to pay 72% interest. Do you? Now, the good news is that we can help you jump ahead of the amortization schedule, and let me show you how. So once again, let's say that you just got that 300,000 mortgage. It's September. You go to make if you were to make your first payment of 1432, again, 1,000 goes to interest and 432 goes to principal. Let's play a game of what if. What if you combined the first 6 months of principal? So if we added all 6 months of the amounts that goes to principal, that comes to $2,615. What if we sent that to the financing company? What if we sent that to the bank? Well, guess what? When you do that, you cancel out interest and you jump ahead in the amortization schedule. And if you remember, from month 1 to month 2, we jumped ahead by $2. Well, guess what? If you sent that $2,615 to your mortgage company, you jumped ahead by a whole whopping $8 or so. That may not sound like a lot, but guess what? You really jumped ahead in that amortization schedule, and you also saved yourself $5,979 in interest. Do you think it's a good investment to send $2,615 to save $5,900? You just doubled your money almost, right? Actually, more than doubled your money. I think that's a pretty darn good investment. The strategies of our program are designed to combine banking strategies with advanced math and innovative technology in order to ensure every single dollar you earn either earns interest or cancels interest. We're reversing the rules of banking into your favor instead of the bank's. We believe you work hard for your money. You deserve to keep as much of it as possible. Now, in order to use our system, there really are 4 requirements. You need debt, you need a checking account, you need a savings account, you need our system. And technically, I'd say that there's 5 requirements. You also need the internet, because you need to access our system through internet. Now, an optional thing that you can do is use some form of a line of credit, whether it be a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, personal line of credit, or a business line of credit. So you can certainly use those in place of the checking and savings. Truly, that's up to you. And quite frankly, we will run your analysis based on what your current situation is. So let's talk about some of the money saving strategies that our system is based upon. There are a number of them, but we're going to talk about 4 of them right now: interest accumulation, interest float, interest cancellation, and strategic debt payoff. And the best way to talk about these concepts is to show an example of these concepts in action. So we're going to have our infamous John and Rebecca Jones. This is actually a fictitious couple that is actually based on a real life couple from way back in 2004, 2005. And John and Rebecca had about $5,000 worth of income, and their expenses each month amounted to $4,800. So on average, they had about $200 left over at the end of the month. Now, the reality is sometimes they had more, sometimes they had less. That's just the reality of life. Sometimes life happens. So when John and Rebecca started this system, they had a mortgage, and that's all that our system was targeting was that mortgage. Their mortgage was $200,000 balance. They had a 6% interest rate at the time, and their payment was $1,199.10. And that was over a 30-year time frame. Now you're going to notice on your screen there also is a line there for a credit card. This part is optional. You do not need to practice credit card float. I cannot emphasize this enough. This part is optional, but I do want to show you some of the power that it can provide if you use it correctly. Now, I can't emphasize enough that this is optional because sometimes when people switch to using a credit card and they start practicing credit card float, they start spending money they don't really have. That's not going to help you. If you can maintain your current spending habits and not spend more than what you earn, then you can, and you have a credit card with a zero balance, credit card float might be a good choice for you. And let me do a little spoiler alert. If you start with a zero balance on a credit card, you put, I don't know, your cell phone bill, some gas on it, your groceries, and then you pay it off in full before the balance is due, how much interest do you pay? Zero. Kind of a fun little thing, right? So let's look at this in action. Once again, we have month number one with a $200,000 balance in our mortgage. Now, month number one, we have that $5,000 worth of income coming in, and it goes into our checking account. Now, remember, our system looks at money coming in, money going out, and it maps out the fastest way for somebody to pay off their debt, given their unique situation. And it's going to provide step-by-step, turn-by-turn directions on exactly how to do just that, become debt-free. So our system says, you know what, instead of having that money sitting in our checking account, let's go ahead and move it from our checking over to our savings, where we can at least accrue interest. Now, mind you, 2% is not a huge amount of money, but we want to take advantage of every single penny, nickel, dime, quarter, dollar. If banks didn't do that, they would lose millions, if not billions, but people, the average person doesn't do that. And we lose hundreds, if not thousands, tens to even hundreds of thousands of dollars by not doing that. We want to take advantage of everything. Now, because we moved our money into our savings account, remember, we're going to start practicing credit card float. We're going to put every expense that we can onto that credit card, from our bills to our mortgage to our auto loans to everything that we possibly can, our groceries, every expense. Now, the reality is you cannot do that. You cannot pay your mortgage with your credit card. So we're just doing a hypothetical to show an example. So let's say we did all $4,800 on that credit card. Now that included our first month payment of $1,199. That brought our balance down from 200 grand down to 199,801. Remember, of that $1,199 payment, only 199 of it went to principal. The rest was all interest. Yikes. But our money sat in our savings account for that 30 days, right? So during those 30 days, we earned a whole whopping $8 on that money sitting in savings. Now that brings us to month number two. Month number two, our income comes in once again, right? So the system knows our money coming in, money going out. It knows that we were practicing float on that credit card. Now, I gave this answer away just a minute ago, but I'm going to ask again. If you start with a zero balance on this credit card, you put all of your expenses onto that credit card, and then you pay it off in full before the due date, how much interest does that charge you? Nada, zip, zilch. You paid zero in interest. So you just borrowed money for 30 days at 0% interest while your money sat in your savings account accruing interest. That is called arbitrage. You earned money while paying a very little amount in interest. In this case, no interest. So the system says, let's go ahead and pay off that credit card in full. Send money from your checking over to that credit card and pay it off in full. Now notice you have $200 in your checking, you've got $5 grand in your savings. You are going to continue to put all of your monthly expenses onto that credit card. Nothing changes there. You just continue to pay it off every single month when your check comes in and the system prompts you. Now the system says, though, now it's time to start canceling out interest on that mortgage. Go ahead and move $3,789 from your savings over to your checking account. That brings the balance down in your savings from $5,008 to $1,219. You now have $3,989 in your checking. Now, I do want to emphasize here, didn't we start with nothing in our savings? Didn't we just create a savings account? We just created a reserve fund, an emergency fund. You can tell the system however much you want in there, and it will save it up before it tackles debt. But I digress. So now you have $3,989 in your checking. The system says, let's go ahead and move money from your checking against that mortgage. You send that $3,989, and you just eliminated 16 payments. You jumped ahead in the amortization schedule. You just saved yourself $18,746 in interest. Did I change your spending habits? No. In fact, you still need to live, right? You remember, you're putting all of your expenses onto that credit card because when you get your next paycheck, it's going to advise you to pay it off in full again. And it does these concepts over and over and over again. So remember, before the balance was $199,801. After we did that funds transfer, it was $195,812. Savings, or reduce the balance by $39.89. Before, we still had 358 payments remaining. Now, we only have 342. We reduced the payments. We eliminated 16 payments. We never have to make them again. That's $1,199.10 that we get to save 16 times. Now, instead of owing $231,000 in interest, we're down to $212,000. We just saved $18,000 in interest. And that was only month number 2. Again, these strategies are done over and over again, but everybody's situation is different. This is for John and Rebecca Jones. So for John and Rebecca Jones, they used the system, they applied $39.89, and they got $18,000 back in savings. Now, a side-by-side comparison. Starting balance conventionally $200,000 with our system $200,000. The balance after 1 year doing what the banks want you to do, you got $197,554. With our system in this situation for John and Rebecca Jones, their balance was $184,811. For them to get to the same time frame of $184 as a balance, it would take 5.5 years traditionally. Repayment time, 30 years versus 10.4 with our system. That's right, our system knocked off 20 years of payments for this couple. Yes, this was a real couple. Interest paid $231 versus $70. They saved $167,219 in interest. And again, that was just one debt. But the reality is most people don't just have one debt. And when you have more than one debt, how do you know which debt to target when and with how much? If you remember when I had that $10,000 of credit card debt, I saw so many different approaches to paying off debt. I had no idea. One said target the debt with the lowest balance. The other one said no, target the debt with the highest interest rate. I was clueless. What made sense? And how do they know what to do best in my situation? Again, they had to do a one-size-fits-all approach to paying off that debt. And the more debts you have, the more payoff options there are. So looking at this debt structure, how would you know which debt to target when with how much? The reality is most people take a flat amount. Oh, I'll have an extra $100 left over each month. I'm going to send a little bit over to the credit card, a little bit over to the auto loan, maybe a little bit over to the furniture loan. I'm not going to do that student loan. They're very flexible with me. It's all good. They guess. They hope. Their fingers are crossed that they're making the right choices each time. And the reality is, and this is going to be a sad reality, FICO or Fair Isaac Company, they're the ones that do our FICO reports. They averaged, or they were looking over all of the consumers, and they found that the average creditor or the average consumer has 13 active creditors. So the example I just showed you only had 5 or 6. But the average person has 13 active people that they owe or companies that they owe. What's the likelihood that they're going to find the right combination every single time? It's very little, because guess what? The reality is, with 13 active creditors, there are over 6 billion combinations on how to pay down those debts. What's the likelihood you're going to choose the right one every single time? Unfortunately, very little. So I'm sure there's no surprise that a powerful program like this has been featured in a variety of nationally distributed magazines and radio shows. But probably the best national recognition we could possibly have gotten is from Ernst & Young. Ernst & Young came knocking on our door back in 2008, and they did some intensive due diligence. If you don't know who they are, Ernst & Young is actually responsible for auditing publicly traded companies. They're responsible for consumer oversight protection. So we're a privately held company, but when they came knocking on our doors, we said, sure, come on in, take a look. We have nothing to hide. They went through our financials. They sat down with their executive team, and they had their financial planners and accountants scour through our program. They actually went through and put every possible scenario that they could think of in our system. And what they found after their extensive due diligence is, not only are we doing what we say we're doing, but we also practice what we preach. We're a debt-free company. Our executive team is phenomenal. Our customer service is exceptional. They also found that we are, in fact, helping people accelerate the pay down of debt, and that we are helping people pay off their loans in as little as 1/3, 1/2 the time. They were so impressed with us, they awarded us with the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award 2008 Utah Region for Financial Services. This is a similar award that's been given to many different companies that you likely recognize. Apple, Starbucks, eBay, Microsoft, so many other nationally acclaimed companies. So I mentioned before that our system is like a GPS. Well, in your GPS, your financial GPS is going to look at how much you owe, need to tell it, for how long, what your interest rates are. Are they fixed? Are they adjustable? Or how are they amortized? Is it compound? Is it simple interest? What are your incomes? How many? How often? Are you commission based? What's your average? What's coming down the road? Do you have some vacations? Do you have to pay some taxes? Do you have holiday spending coming up? And when that unexpected expense happens, such as those medical bills, the broken appliances, my son's travel league baseball fees, oh my goodness, are those exceptionally high? They help you stay on track, just like the GPS in your vehicle helps you stay on track. Our system helps you stay on track. It is your financial GPS. Just like your GPS in your vehicle guides you to make all the turns, our system guides you to pay off all your debts. Just like the GPS takes away the stress of deciding which route to take when obstacles come up, our system takes away the stress when complicated financial decisions come up. Just like the GPS in your vehicle helps you stay focused on the road, our system helps you stay focused on your financial plan with real-time feedback. Our GPS tracks your success as you follow the routes, just like our system tracks your success as you follow the program. The GPS in your vehicle gives you the exact time you're going to arrive at your destination. Guess what? Our analysis will give you the month and year, and our system will give you the exact date. That's the Money Max account system, and you can update it in as little as 20 minutes per month. I'd encourage you when you're first starting to do it, update it every week. I'm lazy, to be honest. I update it about once a month, and it takes me about 10-15 minutes each time. The results speak for themselves. To date, we have helped our clients pay off over $2 billion in principal. That's right. We have helped so many people achieve their financial goals. In fact, if you look at a survey that was done with a lot of the people in the Fortune 500 companies that run them and some of the wealthiest people in the world, they have found in order to achieve financial goals, in order for them to be financially successful, they found that they had to eliminate their debt. And it's a fact. In order for you to achieve your financial goals, you must eliminate your debt. So at this point, I typically get asked, will this system work for me? I really don't know. I don't have a clue. So please get back with the person that invited you to this meeting and have them complete a free savings report. They will do a side-by-side comparison of what you're currently doing versus what our system can do for you, so you can make an educated decision about whether or not our system is right for you. That analysis is free, and they'll let you know when your financial freedom date is too. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to leave you with this one thought. The only difference between where you are and where you want to be are the steps you haven't taken. Isn't it time for you to feel financially free? Isn't it time for you to see what it's like to be out of debt? Get back with the person that invited you to this meeting. If you received an email, get back with the person that sent you the email. If you saw it on social media, please get back with the person who posted and invited you there. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day. And remember, take action and take action today. Thank you again. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.